The European ministers will also tackle during an informal breakfast the ties between the EU and the UK in terms of foreign policy and security perspectives. And that was the news coming to you from Bucharest, Radio Romania International.
This is Radio Romania International broadcasting from Bucharest. Business Flash.
Welcome to this business update with me, Tony Watson. OMV Petrom, the biggest energy company in Southeast Europe, has initiated a new campaign of offshore shallow water drilling in the Istria perimeter in the Black Sea, the company announced. The first operations started in late December 2020, and early this year it will start drilling with the second platform. The investment for this campaign is about 32 million euro. The two drilling sites go to depths of 2,500 meters in waters about 60 meters deep. The National Prognosis and Strategy Commission estimates a smaller rise in the gross domestic product for 2021 in Romania than it anticipated in the autumn. The institution expects a growth of 4.3%, down from the 4.5% initially forecast. In this way, Romania's GDP would go up to 1,116.8 billion lei, around 228 billion euro. Romania is among the countries most active in taking financial measures to react to the COVID-19 pandemic, a recent World Bank study indicates. The document analyzes the actions taken in the financial sector by the authorities in 154 countries and other jurisdictions in National Bank opinion blog signed by Cristian Vitti, National Bank advisor to the governor, quoted by Ager Press. Construction work in Romania dropped in November 2020 by 4.9% as compared to the month before. This is the highest decline among European Union member states, according to data published by the European Office of Statistics, Eurostat. Registrations of motorcycle, all-terrain vehicles and scooters in Romania went up by 50% in 2020 compared to data reported 1 year before, according to the Association of Automobile Manufacturers and Importers. According to the quoted source, from a territorial analysis point of view, most of the new registrations of motorcycles were in Bucharest, namely 878 units, which is 40.5% of the total. The next counties with the highest number of registrations were Ilfov with 136 and Cluj with 113 units. You have been listening to a business update from Radio Romania International.
This is Radio Romania International broadcasting from Bucharest. Panorama. Welcome everyone to a fresh edition of Panorama, our roundup of the best moments in our shows these past 2 weeks. I'm Gerd Payton. We start with one of the biggest topics in the limelight right now, the anti-COVID-19 vaccination campaign, which is already in full swing across Europe. Many people are wondering when the pandemic is actually going to end. A roundup of opinions on this subject in this edition of The Future Starts Today, brought to you by Kalin Kotsoyu.
The pandemic took by surprise and upended the entire world and put an exceptional burden on researchers, finding a vaccine against the novel coronavirus in record time. In an unprecedented act of mobilization, in less than a year from the first confirmed case, several vaccines were created. The first to be approved and distributed for immunization were the ones made by the American company Pfizer and the German company BioNTech. Then came the Moderna vaccine, with more on the way. From now on, ambitious plans for immunization can only be in jeopardy by mistrust among the population or disruptions in the chain of distribution, according to experts. With the advent of vaccines, the question that arises is when the pandemic will be over. As a guest on Radio Romania, Dr. Emilian Popovici, Vice President of the Romanian Epidemiological Society, spoke about the percentage of the population that needs to be vaccinated to attain herd immunity.
Recomandarea la ora actuală pentru toate țările este ca în decurs de maxim un an de zile sau un an de zile să se imunizeze 60% minim din populație.
The recommendation right now for all countries is to immunize at least 60% of the population within a year at the most, and at the same time for measures to be taken to keep the rate of infection at the minimum in order to reduce the possibility of mutation of the virus. The more people are infected with the virus, the higher the opportunity for the virus to generate mutations, as happened with the new strain that emerged in the United Kingdom. So this is the idea: 60% of the population immunized within a year and keeping the infection in check, over 70%. And we can talk about functional herd immunity. According to the prestigious Science magazine, the accelerated development of a vaccine against the novel coronavirus, a full pandemic, is the highest scientific achievement of the year 2020. Dr. Marius Janta, president of the Center for Innovation in Medicine, talks about the factors that facilitated the creation of vaccines much faster than usual.
În primul rând, avem o inovare în modul în care tehnologiile de secvențiere genomică au fost folosite. Acest lucru, maturitatea la care au ajuns aceste...
First of all, we have an innovation in terms of the genomic sequencing technologies available. The maturity of these technologies, as well as data analysis, allowed for a very quick identification of the virus, only 30 days from the first reported case. This means 6 times faster than we were used to in identification of a virus. So, in other words, with the publication of the viral genome on January 10th, 2020, we, and I mean by this the scientific community, were able to start working on the design of a vaccine and then the design of clinical studies. Therefore, in January instead of June or July. So there, the gain of half a year derived from the technologies that allowed us to find out very fast what we were dealing with and who we are fighting. The second tier of innovation, and we are talking about the technology that has reached maybe not maturity, but has at least a good start, is the technology of messenger RNA, which is, in fact, the basis of the first vaccines approved by the EU, the Pfizer and BioNTech vaccines. This technology started being developed 30 to 40 years ago. There were over 1,000 registered clinical studies using this technology in the United States. But in the context of this public health crisis, the interest was much higher. And now we come to the third tier of innovation, that at the level of systems and institutions. Traditionally, we were used to having 44,000 people enrolled, the number included in the Pfizer-BioNTech third testing stage, over a long period of time, spacing out the expenses, reducing financial risks. Now the enrollment of these people was done in only a few months. The number is significant. The innovation consisted of taking on the risk and the way in which the regulatory authorities worked with private companies. The fourth tier was at the level of the regulatory authorities themselves, and here I think we already have best practices that have to remain in place, namely a reduction in bureaucratic aspects that were delaying access. In other words, getting vaccines in record time does not mean that they are unsafe. At the same time, it is important for the vaccination to occur in the shortest time possible, in parallel with measures to contain the spread of the virus. This is the path taken by Israel, the most advanced country in terms of immunization, which vaccinates each day as much as 1% of the population. Here is Radio Romania's Israel correspondent, Dragoș Ciocărlan.
Populația a fost receptivă și a înțeles că este foarte util. Oprirea epidemiei de coronavirus va duce la redeschiderea economiei până la sărbători.
The population was receptive and understood the necessity. Stopping the coronavirus pandemic will mean the reopening of the economy before the Easter holidays. It is estimated that by mid-March, almost the entire population will have been vaccinated. From another perspective, this is a national security matter.
In Visit Romania this week, we invited you to go on a virtual tour of Romania's National History Museum. Our guide was the museum director, Dr. Ernest Oberlander Târnoveanu. Mihaela Ignatescu has more.
49 years ago, on May 8th, Romania's National History Museum opened its doors to the public for the first time. It is located in the capital of Romania, Bucharest, on one of the most important boulevards, flanked by many tourist attractions. The museum is hosted by the former Post Office Palace, inaugurated in 1900. The neoclassical style building also has an inner courtyard, and the appearance of the building seems to be inspired by that of the Post Office Palace in Geneva. Until 1972, the palace housed the headquarters of the Post Office in Bucharest, and the National Museum of Romanian History was inaugurated there. Here is Dr. Ernest Oberlander Târnoveanu, director of the institution, talking about the museum's collections. There are collections consisting of several 100,000 items, many of them essential to understand the history of Romania, but not only. Many are unique in Europe and are part of the World Heritage. Our collections cover, from the point of view of chronological development, about 600,000 years of human existence, since the Lower Paleolithic, when the first signs of human activity appeared, to this day. The National Museum of History of Romania started an intense and systematic digitalization program 10 years ago, says Dr. Ernest Oberlander Târnoveanu. It's about virtual tours of permanent and temporary exhibitions, but also about heritage digitalization projects. At this moment, the National Museum of History has the richest, most complete and most diverse program for presenting its collections in the virtual space. At the moment, there are 32 virtual tours of some exhibitions on the museum's website. They cover the modern, contemporary, medieval, ancient history, the patrimony of some museums from abroad, presented in temporary exhibitions. At the same time, one can see the results of international exhibitions organized in partnership with many museums in Europe, such as the exhibition Images in the Balkans. Virtual tourists find exhibitions that they can visit any time, says Dr. Ernest Oberlander Târnoveanu. These exhibitions cover important periods: antiquity, the Middle Ages, or the modern and contemporary period. One of the last exhibitions presented to the public is the Romania 1989 exhibition about the fall of the communist regime, with which many were contemporaries. We have superb virtual exhibitions that present Romania's gold and silver, such as an exhibition from 2013, which traveled to several countries in Romania and Hungary, with exceptional pieces from the Romanian heritage, many of them unique in Europe and in the world. We also have exhibitions dedicated to great rivals of the Middle Ages, such as Mircea the Old or Stephen the Great. You can also enjoy exhibitions that present significant events for the history of Romania, such as the participation in the Second World War or the achievement of national unity in 1918.
Next, Daniel Bilz will bring you the latest market releases brought out by Casa Radio Publishing House in this edition of World of Culture.
Casa Radio Publishing House has added fresh titles, most of them launched in late 2020 during the International Book Fair Gaudamus, staged by Radio Romania. The collection entitled The Romanian Poetry Library has included a book and CD under the title There Was a Time When I Used to Tell You All, as well as an anthology of poetry by Emil Brumaru, one of Romania's most important and popular contemporary poets. Language is one of the main qualities of Brumaru's poetry, a ludic and complex poet exploiting like no other the huge potential of the Romanian vocabulary, says critic Marius Chivo. The poems included in this anthology were read by poet Emil Brumaru for Radio Romania in 2002 in a series of recordings made by journalist Emil Boroianu. The volume also includes an interview made by Eugen Lucan for Radio Romania Culture in 2001, texts signed by critics Cosmin Ciotloș and Bogdan Crețu, as well as writers Veronica D. Niculescu and Șerban Foarță, with graphic illustrations by Zamfira Zamfirescu. The Radio Prikindel Radio Toddler collection, through which the Radio Publishing House has made available pages of great literature to children, read by the leading figures of radio theatre, has launched several audiobooks such as Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves, The Extraordinary Voyages of Sinbad the Sailor, and The Humpbacked Horse. Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves is a graphic novel by Alexandru Ciubotariu, adjusted for radio by Marin Traian. A radio recording dating back to 1965 with several remarkable actors like Ștefan Mihailescu Brăila, Nicolae Gărdescu, Mircea Constantinescu, Marian Hudac. The Extraordinary Voyages of Sinbad the Sailor has been graphically illustrated by Cristiana Călin, with a radio script signed by Marin Traian. The show was recorded by Radio Romania in 1969 with famous actor Fori Egele as Sinbad the Sailor. Also, a graphic novel, The Humpbacked Horse, has benefited from illustrations by Octavian Curoșu, with a script by Victor Frunze after the famous Russian story. The CD includes a remarkable Radio Romania recording from 1964 with famous Romanian actors like Nicolae Gărdescu, Dumitru Șurdui, and Marin Moraru. Ligia Necula with the Casa Radio Publishing House has also told us about other fresh launches at the International Book Fair Gaudamus.
Avem, bineînțeles, colecția de tese, spunem noi,
I will be talking about the Star Collection, as we call it, Good Night Children, to which we managed to add 2 more volumes. There are 2 volumes with 7 stories each, read by the most appreciated voices in the radio archive. You will hear in these audiobooks the voices of great Romanian actors such as Octavian Cotescu, Leopoldina Bălănuță, Ștefan Mihailescu Brăila, Alexandrina Halic, and Liliana Tomescu. As many of our listeners already know, the actors in this collection are the ones who brought to life the unforgettable stories which the past generations used to listen to. But we are sure that we can all return to these fairy tales of the world, from India, China, Africa, Mongolia, Canada, Latvia, and so on. I would also like to mention the release of an audiobook which many of those who follow us were waiting for, Luchafaru, The Morning Star. This is a CD that I believe will bring joy to many readers and radio listeners, but also to theatre lovers. I could say that this release is quite an event because you will have the opportunity to listen to 3 actors from different generations who come up with various interpretations of the famous poem by Romania's greatest poet, Mihai Eminescu. These actors are George Vraca, Ion Caramitru and Ada Condeescu. I think that this audio book with various interpretations of the poem, Luchafaru, could be a tool for the teachers of Romanian language and literature. Ligia Năcula also told us about the new releases and the music collections of Casa Radio publishers, namely Jazz Forum, Radio Romania Music, Performances Profile, Dowry Box, Masters of Choral Art.
Dacă tot am ocazia să vă povestesc despre lucrurile minunate.
Since we've already talked about the collections dedicated to children, I will first mention the anniversary album Oh What Joy, which marks the 75th anniversary of the Radio Children's Choir. Imago Mundi is more, Cantemir, and S.P. Brancusi is another new release in which the Imago Mundi instrumental ensemble brings together in a generous music album 3 CDs devoted to some outstanding personalities of Romanian culture. We have also released a CD that includes famous pieces by Tchaikovsky and Dvorak, performed by Cristian Măcelaru and the National Radio Orchestra. Alexandru Tomescu returns to Casa Radio Publishers with a CD entitled Concerto, in which he performs Mozart, Sax and Dvorak alongside the National Radio Orchestra conducted by Cristian Măcelaru and Tiberiu Soare. I think 2020 was the birth of the year. We dedicated to the composer a CD with the 5th and 7th symphonies performed by the National Radio Orchestra conducted by Horia Andreescu and Cristian Măcelaru. In the end, I will be talking about jazz, and I can say that the CD Night and Day, featuring Reza Zan and the Radio Big Band conducted by Emil Kuba, enjoyed great success.
And we go out with an excerpt from Let Me Tell Her, performing our Solar and Fly project. Focused on winning. You are listening to Radio Romania. Translation.
Next up in this broadcast is All the Jazz with Neil Kamaratsian. Today's program features the Romanian French violinist Florin Niculescu, one of the most appreciated instrumentalists of the jazz manouche style. The Romanian artist has been living in France for almost 3 decades. He was born in Bucharest into a family of famous fiddlers and attended the Dunăre Party Music School and furthered his studies at the Georgian Music High School, also in Bucharest. Since he was 24, he has been living in Paris. He's literally living jazz and enjoys a successful international career. Let's listen to violinist Florin Niculescu performing the well-known Romanian traditional tune, The Skylark.
Thank you.
Niculescu will perform alongside the French guitarist Direli Lagrène a piece called Rue de Vie, which they performed at a memorable recital in Vienna in December 2007. Violinist Florin Niculescu sometimes visits Romania to participate in various events, such as the International Jazz Festival held in Ploiești, where he participated alongside his trio and the pianist Sorin Vlad. Listen to them performing the piece Improvisation.
This is Bucharest Radio Romania International. Listeners Letterbox. Welcome to a fresh edition in our Listeners Letterbox. One of our series entirely dedicated to you, our listeners from around the world. A radio show where we live through your letters, reports, suggestions and comments on our program. As usual, and as always, we are really grateful for the feedback we get from our listeners on the short maintenance. Eugen Nasta is your host this week. The first letter we take out of the box is the one sent in by Terho Utiainen of Patioki in Finland. Our listener jumped into our radio station on January the 4th, 2021. Terho was listening to Radio Oltenia in southern Romania. Among the program details he mentioned, there was the station ID Ascultați Radio Oltenia. You're listening to Radio Oltenia. Then there was the news read by a female reader. There was the musical bit of the broadcast as well, as richly represented. There were three pieces performed by Mihai Enescu, Constantin Lătărețu, and Filoctea Lăcătușu. Dear Terho, we are impressed you took the time to tune into our regional radio stations, Radio Oltenia among them, where traditional music heritage is still very well represented. Teruhiko Hachi, a neurologist living in Nagoya, Japan, tuned into our radio station on Saturday, January the 9th, 2021. Teruhiko sent us a reception report and an extensive letter from which we took the liberty to quote. As you may know, the state of emergency for the COVID-19 has been declared again in and around Tokyo. The number of the newly infected persons has been increasing day by day here in Nagoya too. The vaccination has not started yet in Japan. Even though I have been listening to your station as much as possible. I am happy the medical workers fighting COVID-19 were chosen as the People of the Year 2020 on Radio Romania International. It was a great honor for me to have nominated me. Talking about your programs, last week's Generation 3.0 was very interesting for me. It is often difficult, even for old-age Japanese like me, to distinguish between Honne and Tatemai. The music programs in the beginning of this year were also interesting. I could listen to many songs dedicated to St. John the Baptist, sung by the famous singers such as Angelica Stoican and Maria Tănase, from various regions of Romania. There are many other programs to stimulate my brain in Radio Romania International. That is why I continue to listen to your station. Thank you, Teruhiko, for the detailed comments on our programs. Rest assured, we have been trying our best here at Radio Romania International so that you may get as variegated a program as possible, something which is at once informative and entertaining. Also from Japan, we received a reception report and comments on our programs sent in by Norisuke Ide, a very employee based in Kinagawa-ku, Tokyo. We took the liberty to quote from his letter. Happy New Year! Today's program was an informative review of the last year's activities in Romania. Especially the international success of the movie Collective should be a cause of celebration for Romania. Before the new year, I watched the traditional bear dance in Pennsylvania in a television program in Japan, and I wonder if there are any traditional dances or songs to welcome the advent of spring in Romania. Our listener in Japan listened to, among other items in our programs, Business Flash, Panorama, a traditional music song, All That Jazz, Listener's Letterbox with quotes from letters sent in by listeners in India, China and Japan.
You're listening to Radio Romania International.
Alan Willie of Carbonear, Newfoundland in Canada, tuned into our radio station on January the 10th, 2021. His simple rating for the news signal of our broadcast was 55534. Alan mainly listens to news in English and in Romanian. Alan uses an Icon R-75 receiver with a 183-meter unterminated beverage antenna to southeast at 135 degrees. Mr. Francis Lawler, living in Dublin, Ireland, tuned into our programs and hear what he wrote. We quote, "Dear friends, I would like to have your latest QSL card, please. I heard Radio Romania International in English on January the 11th, 2021, from 12:25 to 12:55 hours UTC on 15460 kHz. Reception using the SIM code was 33333. I was using an AIRSPY S350 radio with a telescopic antenna. The program included items on sports, women's handball. Jazz included a song called Don't Stress Me Out. Listeners letterbox, letters from China, Croatia and Japan. Thank you very much. Mr. Siddhartha Bhattacharjee, based in Pashtun Medinipur, West Bengal in India, sent in his reception report. Among other things, a listener in India posted a question related to our national flag. Dear Mr. Bhattacharjee, in modern times, the national flag of Romania was created and used by the Romanian revolutionaries of 1848. To a decree of the revolution, the color of the flags were blue, then yellow and red. Siddhartha wished the entire team, we quote, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you and your family. Thanks for your entire broadcasting team for your kind cooperation and provide us valuable information to us throughout the year 2020. Wishing you and your dear family a very Happy New Year 2021. May all your wishes and resolutions be fulfilled this year, and may God bring good health and peace to all. Be safe and fight against coronavirus. Hope all of your staff is safe. Now, in your country, going to unlock your normal to normalize human life to fight against coronavirus, end of quote. Alexandra Bogdanova of Považská Bystrica in Slovakia tuned into our programs on January the 14th, 2021. We took the liberty to quote from her message. The broadcast was understandable and audible. The audio was followed by moderate interference. Also, the signal was faded from time to time, but it mostly returned to the quality it was on before. The broadcast was in open format. The talking was by the broadcasters, one male and female, who were speaking in English language. The first program was called Traveler's Guide. It was about animals in areas like Pennsylvania. Also, it was about how some animals in some locations don't live anymore. Later, another program called Generation 3.0 started. It was also about the economic situation and various topics about learning, distant learning. Later, the broadcasters informed that this was the end of the program. Next, the broadcasters informed about when and where can listeners from Central Europe tune into your programs. That's all we have time for in this week's Listener's Letterbox. It has been a privilege for me to be able to read out your comments. Stay tuned to our programs as there's more to come in terms of info, music and culture. I am Old John Master in Bucharest. Bye for now. Coming up next on Radio Romania International.
In the following minutes of our traditional music slot, we invite you to listen to Maria Apostol, a member of the traditional music in Gorj, southern Romania. Here she is now at the microphone with a song specific to her native area in Gorj.
And with that, our broadcast in English for listeners in Western Europe and Japan has come to an end. You can listen to our next program for Western Europe tomorrow at 6:30 hours UTC on 7345 kilohertz in analog system and on 6040 kilohertz in the DRM system. Listeners in Japan can listen to our next program tomorrow at 23 hours UTC on 7325 kilohertz and 9620 kilohertz. We can also be heard on the internet at www.rri.ro channel 1. If you have any comments or suggestions, please write an email at engl@rri.ro. Goodbye.